Margaret seemed to find it a little hard to tell hers, and waved the brake before her face, as if to disperse imaginary gnats, while she said slowly, "I should like a lovely house, full of all sorts of luxurious things. Nice food, pretty clothes, handsome furniture, pleasant people, and heaps of money. I am to be mistress of it and manage it as I like, with plenty of servants, so I never need work a bit. How I should enjoy it, for I wouldn't be idle, but do good and make everyone love me dearly." "Wouldn't you have a master for your castle in the air?" asked Laurie slyly. "I said pleasant people, you know," and Meg carefully tied up her shoe as she spoke, so that no one saw her face. "Why don't you say you'd have a splendid, wise, good husband and some angelic little children? You know your castle wouldn't be perfect without," said blunt Joe, who had no tender fancies yet, and rather scorned romance except in books. "You'd have nothing but horses, inkstands, and novels in yours," answered Meg petulantly. "Wouldn't I, though? I'd have a stable full of Arabian steeds, rooms piled with books, and I'd write out of a magic inkstand so that my works should be as famous as Laurie's music. I want to do something splendid before I go into my castle, something heroic or wonderful that won't be forgotten after I'm dead. I don't know what, but I'm on the watch for it, and mean to astonish you all some day. I think I shall write books and get rich and famous. That would suit me, so that is my favorite dream." "Mine is to stay at home safe with father and mother and help take care of the family," said Beth contentedly. "Don't you wish for anything else?" asked Laurie. "Since I had my little piano, I am perfectly satisfied. I only wish we may all keep well and be together, nothing else." "I have ever so many wishes, but the pet one is to be an artist and go to Rome and do fine pictures and be the best artist in the whole world," was Amy's modest desire.
"We're an ambitious set, aren't we? Every one of us but Beth wants to be rich and famous and gorgeous in every respect. I do wonder if any of us will ever get our wishes," said Laurie, chewing grass like a meditative calf.
"I've got the key to my castle in the air, but whether I can unlock the door remains to be seen," observed Joe mysteriously.
"I've got the key to mine, but I'm not allowed to try it. Hang college," muttered Laurie with an impatient sigh.
"Here's mine,"
and Amy waved her pencil.
"I haven't got any,"
said Meg forlornly. "Yes, you have," said Laurie at once.
"Where?"
"In your face."
"Nonsense, that's of no use."
"Wait and see if it doesn't bring you something worth having," replied the boy, laughing at the thought of a charming little secret which he fancied he knew.
Meg colored behind the brake, but asked no questions, and looked across the river with the same expectant expression which Mr. Brooke had worn when he told the story of the night. "If we are alive 10 years hence, let's meet and see how many of us have got our wishes, or how much nearer we are than now," said Joe, always ready with a plan. "Bless me, how old I shall be! 27!" exclaimed Meg, who felt grown up already, having just reached 17. "You and I will be 26, Teddy, Beth 24, and Amy 22. What a venerable party," said Joe.
"I hope I shall have done something to be proud of by that time. I'm such a lazy dog, I'm afraid I shall dawdle, Joe."
"You need a motive, Mother says, and when you get it, she's sure you'll work splendidly."
"Is she? By Jupiter, I will, if I only get a chance," cried Laurie, sitting up with sudden energy. "I ought to be satisfied to please Grandfather, and I do try, but it's working against the grain, you see, and comes hard. He wants me to be an India merchant as he was, and I'd rather be shot. I hate tea and silk and spices and every sort of rubbish in his old ships bring, and I don't care how soon they go to the bottom when I own them. Going to college ought to satisfy him, for if I give him 4 years, he had to let me out from the business, but he's set, and I've got to do just as he did, unless I break away and please myself as my father did. If there was anyone left to stay with the old gentleman, I'd do it tomorrow."
Laurie spoke excitedly and looked ready to carry his threat into execution on the slightest provocation. For he was growing up very fast, and in spite of his indolent ways, had a young man's hatred of subjection, a young man's restless longing to try the world for himself. "I'd advise you to sail away in one of your ships, and never come home again till you have tried your own way," said Joe, whose imagination was fired by the thought of such a daring exploit, and whose sympathy was excited by what she called Teddy's wrongs. "That's not right, Joe. You mustn't talk in that way, and Laurie mustn't take your bad advice. You should do just what your grandfather wishes, my dear boy," said Meg in her most maternal tone. "Do your best at college, and when he sees that you try to please him, I'm sure he won't be hard or unjust to you. As you say, there's no one else to stay with and love him, and you'd never forgive yourself if you left him without his permission. Don't be dismal or fret, but do your duty, and you'll get your reward, as good Mr. Brooke has, by being respected and loved."
"What do you know about him?"
asked Laurie, grateful for the good advice, but objecting to the lecture, and glad to turn the conversation from himself after his unusual outbreak. "Only what your grandpa told us about him. How he took good care of his own mother till she died, and wouldn't go abroad as tutor to some nice person, because he wouldn't leave her, and how he provides now for an old woman who nursed his mother, and never tells anyone, but is just as generous and patient and good as he can be."
"So he is, dear old fellow," said Laurie heartily, as Meg paused, looking flushed and earnest with her story. "It's like Grandpa to find out all about him without letting him know, and to tell all his goodness to others, so that they might like him. Brooke couldn't understand why your mother was so kind to him, and asking him over with me, and treating him in her beautiful, friendly way. He thought she was just perfect, and talked about it for days and days, and went on about you all in flaming style. If I ever do get my wish, you see what I'll do for Brooke."
"Begin to do something now by not plaguing his life out," said Meg sharply.
"How do you know I do, miss?"
"I can tell by his face when he goes away. If you have been good, he looks satisfied and walks briskly. If you have plagued him, he is sober and walks slowly, as if he wanted to go back and do his work better."
"Well, I like that. So you keep an account of my good and bad marks in Brooke's face, do you? I see him bow and smile as he passes your window, but I didn't know you'd got up a telegraph."
"We haven't. Don't be angry, and don't tell him I said anything. It was only to show that I cared how you get on, and what is said here is said in confidence, you know," cried Meg, much alarmed at the thought of what might follow from her careless speech.
"I don't tell tales," replied Laurie, with his high and mighty air, as Joe called a certain expression which he occasionally wore. "Only Brooke is going to be a thermometer, I must mind and have fair weather for him to report."
"Please don't be offended. I didn't mean to preach or tell tales or be silly. I only thought Joe was encouraging in a feeling which you'd be sorry for by and by. You are so kind to us, we feel as if you were our brother, and say just what we think. Forgive me, I meant it kindly." And Meg offered her hand with a gesture both affectionate and timid. Ashamed of his momentary pique, Laurie squeezed the kind little hand and said frankly,
"I'm the one to be forgiven. I'm cross and have been out of sorts all day. I like to have you tell me my faults and be sisterly, so don't mind if I'm grumpy sometimes. I thank you all the same."
Bent and showing that he was not offended, he made himself as agreeable as possible, wound cotton for Meg, recited poetry to please Joe, shook down cones for Beth, and helped Amy with her ferns, proving himself a fit person to belong to the Busy Bee Society. In the midst of an animated discussion on the domestic habits of turtles, one of those amiable creatures having strolled up from the river, the faint sound of a bell warned them that Hannah has put tea to draw, and they would just have time to get home to supper.
"May I come again?"
asked Laurie. "Yes, if you are good and love your book, as the boys in the primer are told to do," said Meg, smiling.
"I'll try."
"Then you may come, and I'll teach you to knit as the Scotchmen do. There's a demand for socks just now," added Joe, waving hers like a big blue worsted banner as they parted at the gate. That night, when Beth played to Mr. Lawrence in the twilight, Laurie, standing in the shadow of the curtain, listened to the little David, whose simple music always quieted his moody spirit, and watched the old man, who sat with his gray head on his hand, thinking tender thoughts of the dead child he had loved so much. Remembering the conversation of the afternoon, the boy said to himself, with a resolve to make the sacrifice cheerfully, "I'll let my castle go and stay with the dear old gentleman while he needs me, for I am all he has."